Hi, and welcome back to Hot Off the Press, the show about new releases and the authors that bring them to you. Tonight, I'm going to be your host, Jim Nettles. And before we get too far down into that to-be-read pile, let's see who all is bringing in those new offerings. So, Chris, you were up first.
Hi, I'm Chris Jackson. I write all kinds of different things. In fact, I'll write just about anything for money. Science fiction, fantasy, mostly high fantasy. I've written horror. I've written a lot of tie-in fiction, game tie-in fiction, you name it. Write me a check and I'll write you a book.
Or write him a check and buy one of the books.
That's true, too.
BL?
Hi, I'm BL Maxwell. I write contemporary and paranormal romance mostly. I'm kind of the same. I write a few genres, but all with LGBT characters, and most are romance.
Lynn?
Hi, I am Lynn Michaels, and like BL, I write paranormal and contemporary romance, and a lot of it's all over the place, but you could find probably a little bit of everything, all romance related.
And Jean Marie.
Hello, I'm Jean Marie Ward. I write fiction, nonfiction, and everything in between. And today we're going to be talking a bit about an upcoming novella.
So since we have a whole lot of liars here for the evening, let's start finding out what kind of stories and tales they're bringing to us. So, Chris, why don't you just tell us a little bit about the story?
So I'm going to cheat because I've kind of got three.
You never.
Well, okay. So this is the third book in a series. This is Vesuvia, third book in my science fiction series with Shadow Alley Press, the Fivefold Universe. So Vesuvia is of the Alden Northcliffe saga. I write science fiction for them because I don't have to build the world. I'm writing in somebody else's world, which is good for me because I'm not a techie or a physicist. So when I get to the hard questions, I just turf it to my developer, DJ Bowden. The one I'm super proud of right now is the sixth and final book in the Blood Sea Tales series. This is high fantasy, set in my own world, so I get to break my own rules. And Deathwalker is the wrap-up novel that is the end of a six-book series. I tend to get into six-book series when I'm writing for myself. I don't know why. And this is probably my most successful novel, the Weapon of Flesh series. And the reason I'm popping that back up is we just had an audiobook done for this. It's out on Audible now. And we got a fantastic guy to do the voices. Ryan Reed, he just blows me away. He's got such a voice, his pacing, his intonation, and all the accents just bang, 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 bang. And he's just flawless. And I just love it. So we're probably going to have the rest of that entire series done. But I'm super excited for all three of those. And I'm going to be debuting them this weekend at Multiverse in Atlanta. So, woohoo.
Excellent. I'll see you there.
Oh, good.
BL, how about you? What are you bringing to us this evening?
Well, I just released a couple weeks ago a paranormal romance called The Things We Find, and it's a little different for me. It's cursed objects, so they're haunted, but they might be possessed by a demon instead of a spirit, so it's kind of a little bit of a crossover there. And then today is my release day for Blinding Light, which is part of the Road to Rocktoberfest Rockstar Romance series. So I've never written a Rockstar romance, and I really had a lot of fun with this. So I'm excited to kind of get into that world a little bit more, use all my 80s and 90s concert experience for data for that.
Yeah, it's a little late to write those tickets off as research, but Lynn, how about you? What are you bringing to us?
Yeah, well, I happen to have Midnight Reunion, which is a Road to Rocktoberfest book coming October 25th. It's that same series. So I've been really getting my Rockstar on as well. and also had plenty of 80s concerts to pull from. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun writing this one for sure.
And Jean Marie, one that we've been waiting on for years.
Yeah.
And years, and the video may actually come out and resurface.
Well, yeah, this is something that the novella that I'm going to be talking about today is something called Siren Bridge, which originally was submitted in 2020. Yeah, that year. But in defiance of the zeitgeist of 2020, it was a comedy. It was, for those who are old enough to remember the TV series Maverick, it's Maverick with magic in skirts. And it's all about a lady who's known better than she should be, called Oleander Jones. And there is a nasty governor. There is, well, you would call them this secondary world's equivalent of the Pinkertons. And there's a big ass siren with hooks, with talons as big as dinner plates. And there's strudel.
Oh, well. Because you always strudel.
There is strudel.
There is strudel. So, BL, why don't we dive a little bit into both of the new books you've got coming out? Tell us a little bit about kind of the worlds that we're going to be walking through, especially the Rockstar world.
Yes. So the Rockstar, I live in the Sacramento area, so I like to write. It's easier for me to visualize where I've been. So I tend to use the Sacramento area a lot. So in this one, it's a band that's been together for a while, but it starts off with their guitar player has left. And so now they're trying to get someone new in there. And the other members, the singer's name is Easy Ryan. His name's Easy. His tongue-tied. His mother gave him the name Easy because everything comes easy to him. So he's just doesn't have a whole lot of tolerance for, people just not doing what he expects of them, basically. But so they get this. The band members are all in their 30s. So they bring in this new guy that's in his 20s that has never played professionally in a band, but he's really good. So, it starts off where they're not really sure if they can trust this guy to do a tour or not, or maybe the band's going to break up. There's kind of that underlying tension through the whole thing. Will they stay together? Will they not stay together? And it all happens within 6 weeks of them getting ready for this big gig they're going to play, their biggest gig, and it's at Black Rock. I think it's called Black Rock, where they have isn't that what it's called, Lynn? Black Rock, where they have
that's right,
Burning Man. So it was kind of fun to combine the two, because I had to do a little tour, so I had to find a few places they can play before. And it's kind of funny because the one place that I picked that I wanted them to play in Sacramento has been closed for a few years now, but it was kind of where up and coming rock stars would play at this place. The Boardwalk is what it was called. And so in the book, I have it where they rent it out, for like a special thing, and they go and play. The day after I wrote that, they announced on the news that it was reopening. So I thought that was kind of a weird karma thing.
Great.
See, now you need to see if you can do a book signing there.
That's right. That's right. So but it really was a lot of fun getting into the whole rock star. I've never written about that, but I grew up. I had a lot of friends who were in bands and, just like garage bands, playing at bars kind of thing. So it really was a lot of fun using that experience and that, what knowledge I have of it and putting that in a book. I had never thought of even writing rock star romance before, but I want to write more now. So, it was a good experience.
And how about that paranormal romance?
Oh, so that one, I got the idea for it with Urban Explorers. And I watch a lot of like paranormal caught on camera. And there was, I don't know why, I'm just fascinated by the real, when people videotape something that they don't expect it to be weird, and it turns out weird. And there was a video of these people that they were urban exploring in a church in England, and there's like a spirit that's kind of peeking out at them, and it was just so creepy to me that I was like, oh, I really want to write urban explorers, something with urban explorers. And so these guys, they start off, they go into a warehouse because they want to try it, but they don't want to do the paranormal stuff. They truly just want to go in, kind of see urban decay, old buildings, that kind of thing. So they go to a warehouse and it's raining really heavy. So have you ever been in a tin building when it's raining? It's really loud. So their nerves are on edge, and they see there's a crank, like a gear, and it's just turning on its own. And they're kind of like, what the heck is this? And they go over and they try to figure out there's nothing connected to it. No, it's just spinning. And then there's a big crack of thunder. So they just leave, they're just like, we've had enough. We don't know what's going on, but we've had enough. So then they decide they'll go to this farmhouse that they've heard of because they kind of want to up the ante a little bit. Well, when they're there, one of them finds a little tin soldier, like like from the Civil War, something like that. And he gets possessed by the spirit that's in that tin soldier. But the other guy doesn't know what's going on, because they really have no experience in this. And so it just kind of opens their world to all these new experiences that they don't know how to handle, and them trying to navigate this, and they don't know who to ask for help. They don't even really know what's going on. So it's sort of everybody's figuring it out while they're figuring it out.
So Lynn, let's talk a little bit about your rock star world.
Yeah, definitely. So when we started this Road to Rocktoberfest, which is the big music festival out where they do Burning Man. So I was like, how am I going to figure out what to write? So I started watching the documentaries, right? So like the Metallica documentary and things like that. And the best part about Rockstar is getting the band back together. So that's kind of what I went with for mine. So my band was like a previous band that was successful, and they broke up. And now, like a decade later, one of the producers is wanting to put them back together for this Rocktoberfest music festival thing. So they have to get back together, getting the band back together. And so the reason they broke up in the first place is because, right, the lead singer, the front man, couldn't keep his ego in check. And that kind of imploded the whole thing. So now that they're getting back together, it's also the lead singer is Miami. That's his nickname, Miami. And the lead guitarist is Jinx. And they were previously a couple. So when they broke up, and then the band broke up and all of that. So now it's not only getting the band back together, but will they get back together? And are they going to make it work? Or is his ego going to get in the way again? So it's called Midnight Reunion. The name of the band was Midnight Hunt. And now it's their big reunion. And what happens? Do they stay together? Do they not stay together? And that's pretty much it. I like the second chance romance type of thing. Haven't written anything like that before. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun. For sure.
So Jean Marie.
Yep.
Let's find out a little bit more about your track.
Okay, well, basically the whole thing started many, many years ago when I was invited to an anthology about mermaids. I, of course, being a comic writer, went to what was the most ridiculous thing I could think of. And that was a siren who had an obsession with baked goods. And so, but that story didn't come off because the anthology didn't happen. And I kept pushing at it. And somehow the siren wound up in a world similar to 19th century American West, but without the colonial overtones, without the displacement of the native tribes, without a lot of the baggage, because I didn't want that. I wanted a comedy. I did not want to continue oppression in what I was writing. So it's a secondary world where the politics have happened very, very differently. And into this world, and to confront this siren, is a woman running from the law, Oleander Jones, who has stolen a very important jewel. And now she has an asshole with an army after her. The Fountain Apprehension Services, which is equivalent to this world's Pinks or Pinkertons. And yes, they are strike breakers. I'm not saying that people are particularly nice in this world. It's just that they don't have the same overtones as our American West. And she's got to deal with that siren if she's hoping to get away. And it gets complicated.
So, Chris, how about you? Which one of the 3 tomes do you want to start with, telling us about the kind of world we're going to walk into?
Okay, let's start with Vesuvia. I've written a lot of books, but I really wanted to write science fiction, and I have in the past, but it never quite took off, never quite sold, because, as I said before, I'm not really the techie guy. But with somebody else doing the world for me and just basically saying, here's a character, here's his backstory, go. I had a great time with it. The gist of it is, here's a career military guy. His name's Alden Northcliffe, and he's kind of changing his career, but still supported by the federal fleet. And now his mission is to investigate a alien war that ended about 1 billion years ago. That's B with a billion. And you think, well, everything's extinct, but maybe not. And so he's running across a lot of alien artifacts, like alien artifacts that can destroy solar systems. So, don't push that button kind of thing. And of course, there's always intrigue and politics and money and corporations and stuff like this to fight with, not to mention cults and subversive organizations, et cetera, et cetera. But this last book, Vesuvia, I get to throw a little bit more romance into it. There's a little bit of romance in the first one. And then Alden went on a sabbatical to another planet, but his girlfriend, Rai, she had a career. She couldn't leave the planet. And he says, well, I got to leave. And they're like, okay, well, if you get back here, your side of the bed's right there. But now they're back together. He's gone back, and it turns out that she just lost an election. So she's got nothing better to do. So yeah, I'll go on an intergalactic romp with you and look for alien artifacts. But what happens when the extinct aliens aren't exactly gone? So that's where that one goes. The second one, now this is the 6th book in a series, so I'm wrapping this up. This not so young lady, she looks young, but she's about 80 years old, is a necromancer. They said make friends, so she made her own friends, right? Doesn't mean she's a bad person. And she ends up caught in the middle of a war. The first 3 books in the series pretty much focus on a pirate, his ship, and a magical curse, et cetera, et cetera. And then, as often happens in my 6-book series, I think it's going to be a trilogy, and then a secondary character is screaming at me about, hey, me. I'm much more interesting than those guys. And so my necromancer, Hashi Severin, got her own book. Ashwalker was the first one that she was the primary character. And that was a really interesting book because I got to write 2 timelines, one chapter, next chapter. So every other chapter is 50 years ago, present day, 50 years ago, present day. And that was lots of fun because it's not only what's happening in the world right now, but her backstory as well, her origin story. So in the middle of about her second book, which was the fifth book in the series. Things are going sideways because events in the first three books kind of pissed off a empire, the Toki Empire, and the emperor is kind of like almost a demigod. They call him the God Emperor. So if you're going to piss off a God Emperor, have a necromancer on your side. Take it home. So that's how I wrap it all up.
Well, we all know that when you're looking at a story, it's all about the people. It's about the characters. It's who do you get to meet? It's who do you get to hang out with? It's who may be having a few trials, tribulations, or someone throwing pastries at them. So let's talk a little bit more about who we're actually going to get to meet, who we're going to get to hang out, and who's going to have to go through their own trials and tribulations. So, Lynn, why don't you tell us a little bit about your rock stars?
Yeah, definitely. So in this band, they all the rock stars in this band have nicknames. They decided that's part of the persona of the band to go by their nicknames. So the front man is Miami, and he is kind of from Miami, and his family's from Miami. So that's how he got his name. And he's the most interesting character, and he's really what started the whole story for me, because he's a typical front man with a big attitude and just thinks that it's his band and everybody has to do what he wants, and they were not about to do that. The guitarist is Jinx, and that was kind of like a play on, everything actually goes good for him. So Jinx is kind of the opposite of going good. So that's his nickname. And he's the guitarist. And once the band broke up, he's the only one out of the band that went on to have a solo career after that. So he has a good career going and a lot more at stake for getting back with the rest of the band. Then we also have Ziggy on drums, and he's got a lot of rock and roll attitude and craziness. He brings his own little brand of crazy to the story. And then the bass guitarist is Wolfgang, and he was a classically trained musician. So like Mozart, Wolfgang, that's how he got his nickname. So they call him Wolf. And the whole story is the dynamic of how they all work together, but also the relationship between Miami and Jinx. And they could never get it together before. Are they going to be able to? And so that's pretty much them. And a lot of play with it is family and what family means, and the band is a family as well as their own families.
A lot of found family going on in the story.
Yes.
So, Jean Marie.
Well, I've mentioned Oleander, goes by the name of Ollie. And, but surrounding her are some villains. One of, most notably, the first one you're going to meet is Lord Helford, who's the governor of the New Dominion territories. And he's the kind of guy who talks like Foghorn Leghorn, and he has his suits tailored so that his shoulders are bigger than they are, and the sleeves are too long to make him look tall when he's standing behind a podium. And he's been using this jewel as a means of hypnotizing young women in his employ. Of course, he's a lousy hypnotist, but they're too scared to tell him so. Ollie has thoughts on this. They are not kind. Then there is the Grand Chancellor of Gruand, which is the proper home of this ruby, who's determined to get it back without scandal. And that's going to cause problem because Ollie's involved. And, well, just say Ollie reminds me a lot of my family. And then, of course, there is Angus McLan, the most honorable bounty hunter in the New Dominion territories. And he's put up against Ollie and the Siren, who really, Yes, she has to eat people for a living, but she's tried not to make it affect who she is inside. And then there is the head of the Falchion Apprehension Services, Lenacee Falchion. God help Allie. God help Lenacee. And that's all I'm going to say about that relationship.
So Chris saved me here. Who do we get to hang out with a little bit more in these developed worlds?
I'm going to tell you about Hashi Severin because she's so fascinating to me. I'm a character writer. I usually start a story with a character in mind. And then a secondary character, as I said, generally takes things over for me. Hashi grew up very troubled. Her mother despised her. Her mother was a performer, a dancer, and was seduced by a noble and got pregnant and had the baby and then was disowned, of course. And so a man that she didn't love married her. And so Hashi grows up with a mother that despised her because she could not, her new husband would not let her have a career as a dancer again. And so here's a woman that despises her daughter and a young lady that grows up in a house absolutely bereft of any kind of love. And when she's coming of age a little bit, she's about 13, 14 years old, and her stepfather starts paying too much attention to her, she hits the street. But she finds solace in a career as an antiquities finder and seller. So an old man who basically has a junk shop. She goes out and picks up things for him and cleans them up and sells them because she's a striking woman. She's tall, she's very dark skinned, she's personable. But it's all kind of an act to hide the pain that she holds inside. Then she finds something that really changes her life, and not for the better. She finds an artifact that is a soul blade. It's a obsidian dagger, and it has the soul of a necromancer in it. And she's thinking, well, dangerous, but I can sell this for a fortune. Unfortunately, things go sideways, and when you're being burned at the stake, you'll resort to anything. And so she resorts to invoking the magic of the soul blade and becoming a necromancer. And things really get uptight because everyone's after her. So she runs away and tries not to use the power, because every time she uses it, she ends up consuming human souls to empower her magic, which is basically a pathway to hell. And in my universe, hell's very real. In fact, there's not just one hell, there's 9 of them. And she knows where she's headed. She's on a highway to hell. And so she hates what she is, she hates what she's doing, but she creates this persona as a dreadful necromancer, mainly to keep people away, to keep people safe from herself. So all she really wants in the world is a nice, quiet, safe place to read books and tinker with her little artifacts and to be left alone. And the trouble with power is it's a trouble magnet. So anytime in this place where she lives in a small isolated city-state called Haven, that is basically a mecca for ne'er-do-wells and criminals. And exiles. And so as war rises and other people's machinations, she doesn't pull punches. When Hashi gets pissed off, my soul is already doomed. I might as well go full Monty here, So lots of people get in her way. And in the end, it turns out to be the God Emperor who's in her way. and she doesn't stand much of a chance against a man who's all but a demigod, but she has a secret weapon. There is actually some romance in the last book too. She has an acquaintance who is a spy master, and what better way to hide in plain sight other than to have a fake relationship. So this other woman is basically her source of information, but to be seen together and not be suspicious, they have to make like they're a couple, and things get a little more involved and more involved and more involved. And next thing you know, there are real feelings here that you didn't think there were. And so, yeah, don't ever fall in love with a necromancer. It never turns out well. But I'm not going to ruin the end for you.
So BL, tell us a little bit more about who we get to meet in your world.
So in the things we find, there's actually a lot. I don't like to have a whole lot of secondary characters just because I feel like then I sort of dilute their characters. So I try to stick with, not a ton. But this one has, the main characters are Griff and Dane. And like I said, they met over urban exploring, and they met in an online forum talking about it. Well, Griff is introduced to that from his coworker, Sid. And Sid, he doesn't know it, but Sid is more into paranormal. And he has like a little team that they go out and explore these things and try to, figure out just what's going on. In this team, there's 3 of them: Blake, Oliver, and Sophia. I kept thinking, I'm like, there's not 2 girls. And, Sophia, Griff doesn't know much about these people. He just knows they're friends of Sid. And he knows that he's seen videos of them going urban exploring and seeing more paranormal things, but he's not interested in that. So he just figures he doesn't really need to know these people. But when Dane is possessed, that's who Sid calls. So these 3 show up at his house, and he finds out that Sophia, they don't know who Sophia is. The other 2 were out hiking and found her at a deserted cabin. She didn't know how she'd gotten there, how long she'd been there, nothing. But they realize that she's able to be a receptacle for these spirits. She can control them, absorb them into her body. And when she does that, she gets they're tattoos, but they're sacred geometry markings. And each of those markings represent a different spirit that she's encountered. And what ends up happening in the story, because she's absorbed so many of these, it starts going bad. And so she doesn't realize that, though, until she has to try to deal with this spirit that Dane is possessed by. So she actually has a pretty big part in it, but you don't really realize that until she has to deal with Dane's whole issue. And in Blinding Light, so the 4 guys in the band are, I had to make little notes. Easy, who his real name is Seamus. And he came here from Ireland with his family when he was 18 or 19. They just immigrated here. His parents, I loved writing. They're Enid and Drake, and they were both punk rockers, like in the 80s. So his mom was a Sid Vicious groupie. And his dad hated that because he just couldn't compete with that. So, they just kind of go back and forth about their 80s punk rock days. The other members of the band, Glenn is the drummer, and he's just kind of the easygoing, he's a family man, but he's in it for the music. He loves playing in a band. He doesn't want to lose it, but he also isn't willing to risk the lead singer, Easy, getting involved with this new guitar player and the band exploding, just blowing up. The bass player is also pretty easygoing. Rory, he hasn't been playing with them as long. He's been playing with them about 5 years, but he's pretty steady too. And so I feel like Glenn and Rory both are kind of standing back, like watching, like what's going to happen. But they do try to control it a little bit too. But they don't want involved in this, in the personal side of it. But they really want to keep the band going. So there's a lot of band politics, and there's a lot of like I had one reviewer say there's a lot of pining because the two main characters really do want to get together, but they know they shouldn't. So they try to, they're like, we'll just wait till this big concert, but it's just killing them to wait that long. So, and I love writing stuff like that where they have to wait. So that was kind of my favorite part.
So I'm going to ask one of my favorite questions here. Because, again, one of the best parts about being a writer is being able to go dive down rabbit holes and find shiny objects and talk about things to research and get into and do. So, Jean Marie, when you were working on this one, what was the thing that you learned, whether it was something in the research, whether it was something that you discovered about yourself, process? What was it that caught you when you were working on this one?
Because it took so long to put the bits together, we're talking a story that got assembled rather like Frankenstein over the years. I can't really pinpoint an aha moment. Okay. Not like some stories I'm working on now where I suddenly realized, in prepping the sequel to Siren Bridge, that what I was talking about was in fact violence perpetrated against women, which is a real downer, but not thanks to Ollie and the stories. It's not going to be, trust me. But the thing that really got to me, though, the most fun thing was researching Pullman Palace cars, because there's a train scene. And I just loved, doing a deep dive into the research of these amazing train cars that were truly palaces on wheels and what you could do with that. And, finding ways also, the other thing that was so much fun was finding ways, because this is a world where technology and magic coexist. And how would they monetize magical power? And to weave that as part of the sociology behind the story, that was so much fun, like patent charms and certain types of prosthetics and all of these things. That was cool to me.
So Chris, diving into these, so what were the things that you came across as you were working on these?
Okay, so the Blood-Sea Tales basically started out as a rollicking pirate tale. And that's kind of my bailiwick. I'm kind of the pirate guy. I've written tie-in pirate stuff for game companies. I've written my own pirate series in the past. So instead of the good pirates and the bad pirates, I wanted to write kind of the morally gray pirate. The pirate that's out for basically freedom. He's a pirate because he is free and beholden to none. And that is kind of the mecca where the pirates and the necromancers and the exiles and the ne'er-do-wells all end up in the same place. They're all out just to be free. And so they congregate in a once abandoned gnomish city that is ringed by mountains and sea, called Haven. It's the whole Blood Sea is between basically two very rich empires. The city-state of Mati, where Hashi Severin is from, and Toki to the north, that is basically Japan in my world. And impassable mountains, and then jungle to the north, the jungles of Nin, where the Fae hang out. So there are Fae exiles, there are Toki exiles, there are Mati exiles, there are pirates, there are islanders, there are people from all over the world come here to get away. There's a ne'er-do-well bardish half-elf, Tory Blackbriar, who basically tries to seduce anything on two legs, and usually does. And there are the Fey princess that managed to take her home grove with her. So the inside of her castle is basically a forest with a sentient tree in the center, which she lives within. So basically, it's a whole lot of world building. Now, I've written probably 18 novels in this world. So I have a timeline, I have magic encyclopedias, I have everything. And so when I'm doing research in my own works, right? So I have a stack of books 1.5 feet high that I have to go back and look at. Oh, wait, what was that? How did they handle that? What was that type of magic? You know, and it's a nightmare. So yeah, I've dug my own rabbit hole.
The worst part of building your own world is having to keep it up.
Yeah. And I have mapped out the entire world right now. It's kind of Pangea, main continent with a whole lot of islands, a whole lot of deserts, huge mountain ranges, dwarves, elves, merfolk, pirates, necromancers, wars, huge asteroid impacts that have left cyclonic storms of wild magic that mutate people and attract dragons. So yeah, I've done a lot of work, and it's fun to just one more Lego on my little castle. And I've already got another series of stories that I'm working on. So yeah, I'm probably going to do this until maybe even after I'm dead. Bury me with my laptop. And then the next thing you know, the little CRT screen starts lighting up, the flat screen, and he's typing.
Well, you know, with touch screens,
right?
It takes a lot less energy for the spectral author.
Yes.
Right.
Editing is a whole lot harder, though. So, BL, what did you learn in working on these couple of stories?
So for the things we find, I needed symbols, and I didn't want to try to make up symbols because I'm not artistic that way. And so in looking into it, they use sacred geometry a lot in different symbolism. And I really like that because a lot of it, they're specific symbols, but they mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So I use that as the basis for what they do, like for their tattoos, and the different incantations they need to do to protect themselves. They draw on sacred geometry. So I felt like it was a lucky find that there were lots of symbols in that to draw from. In Blinding Light, I had to write lyrics, and I hated writing poetry when I was a kid. I hated it with a passion. And to me, lyrics are similar to poetry. So I did write some lyrics in that. So I feel like I had to research that a little bit. Even it really is one of my most hated things to do, but I did it and it's done. And I think I ended up with like six different songs that have a little bit of lyrics in each one. So that was my big win on research there.
And Lynn, for you, what research rabbit hole did you trip over, especially staggering through the memory of the 80s and 90s, rock scene?
It really was about the 80s and 90s music for sure. And I researched before, I enjoyed watching all of these rock documentaries, Metallica, the Go-Go's, Motley Crue, the Police. I just really immersed myself in all of that. And it kind of reconnected with the music of my past. And, when I was a teenager, I absolutely loved writing poetry and music and lyrics, wanted to be a rock star, except that I can't sing and I have no musical talent, but love writing all of that stuff. Love writing the lyrics, and so I really reconnected with that music and reminded myself how much music touches people. It's like you hear that song and you're taken right back. It's like a time machine. You're taken right back to those days. So much of life is put into the music and so much comes out of it. So as I was writing my characters, when they had to write songs, it was all about, all the angst that they were going through. But it was a lot of fun and reconnecting with a lot of past memories, and love the rock and roll. Love the rock and roll.
Hey, BL, here's good news. Next time you got to do a rock and roll story, you can sub out the lyrics.
I was totally going to say that. I'm totally talking to Lynn the next time.
Get me up on the next one.
Well, guys, I appreciate you bringing everything to stack up that to be read pile. But before we leave, let's make sure everybody knows where to find you guys and where to find these. So, Chris, let's start holding up to half a library again.
Yeah, pretty much. It's easy. You can find me online at Jack's Books, jaxbooks.com. And if you happen to live in the greater Atlanta area, I'm going to be there this coming weekend. Of course, this won't air until that is long past. But anyway, I'm doing Multiverse. That's my last con of the year. I generally do Dragon Con, Gen Con, and a couple of smaller cons a year. So I do the con circuit, but you can always hit me up at jaxbooks.com. You can contact me. I have a contact page, and you can sign up for my newsletter.
BL?
I'm always on Facebook. That's the easiest place to find me. BL Maxwell at Facebook. I'm on Amazon. All my books are on Amazon. I also have a webpage, blmaxwellwriter.com, and you can contact me there.
Lynn?
Yep, I'm always on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I do have a website. You can actually get all of the social media, all the links to the books. You can find me on Amazon, but LynnMichaelsWrites.com is the repository for all things Lynn Michaels.
And Jean Marie?
Okay, well, you can find all my stuff and links to all the stuff that's published. Most of my things have been traditionally published, so Amazon, as well as Barnes & Noble or your favorite bookstore, they can be ordered at JeanMarieWard.com. And I'm also on Facebook as Jean Marie Ward, on Twitter as Jean_Marie_Ward. And Instagram, I'm on one of those handles, but I really am not on Instagram. I'm just placeholding there. Siren Bridge is scheduled to be released on November the 8th, which is a day of a solar eclipse. I am not sure how I feel about that, but I'm actually looking forward to the release. And that will be available from Amazon. It's being published by Falstaff Books. So again, all the usual places. And I've got stuff coming out later this year, short stories coming out later this year, some novellas coming out in 2023, also from Falstaff, and a short story coming out from Zombies Need Brains. You can also, if you haven't gotten enough of me by now, I do interviews for Galaxy's Edge magazine, and they've just published my interview with Mary Robinette Cole. I will have another one coming up in January with P. Jelly Clark. After that, it'll be Nisi Shaw, and I've got some interesting folks lined up for 2023.
And I've had the pleasure of being your host tonight, Jim Nettles. You can find me at jamespnettles.com, authoressentials.net, authoressentialsworkshops.com, the Speculative Fiction Academy.com, and of course, here ConTinual. And we will see you guys soon. Go stack up those to be read piles. Night, everybody.